Good evening and welcome to Taking Stock. We are in an SAA 340-600. It's a long aircraft. It's one of the aircraft bought by Coleman Andrews during his time, and it's a big four-engine gas guzzler. One of the problems that SAA has in trying to turn a profit. With me on Taking Stock this evening is Peter Davies. He has been an airline executive for many years. He's tried and failed to retire 2 or 3 times so far, and has been brought in as part of the turnaround team under Vuyani Jahana at SAA. Now, his most recent job was turning around Air Malta. He created an airline in the Caribbean, but surely this has got to be the biggest turnaround effort so far. Peter Davies, why not just take this airline, close the doors, pay everybody off, and save South African taxpayers a huge amount of money?
Well, because that's not the answer. This airline is perfectly fixable. It just needs a good opportunity to settle down, work on what's required to make sure that South Africa can be boasting a national carrier that can make a profit. If I look at the history of South Africa Airways, particularly over the last 10 or 12 years, I mean, has made a profit in the past, but it's had lots of reports, lots of expensive consultants, lots of CEOs, all of which actually make good reading. I've read most of them, but none were really executed, none were really implemented. And that's a great shame. I think this airline has a great opportunity in being turned around and to make South Africa proud of its national airline.
What is the purpose of a national carrier? So many countries have abandoned the notion of a national carrier. We've seen airline groups consolidate. British Airways is now British Airways and Iberia. KLM is KLM Air France. People have abandoned this the early 20th century notion of having a flag carrier. Why do we need it?
Well, British Airways is still British Airways, and Iberia is still the flag carrier of Spain. So the fact they've all gone into one group doesn't detract from the need for a flag carrier. For me, a flag carrier represents the vision, the hope and aspirations of any country. And I don't see South Africa being any different to any other country in being proud to fly the flag, providing it's allowed to run an airline that represents true value for its shareholders.
And how does one achieve that true value? I mean, one looks at SAA right now, losing money hand over fist. The latest appeal from your chief executive, Vuyani Jahana, is for 21 and a bit billion rand.
21.7.
There we go, thank you, 21.7. 9.6 to pay off existing debt. Indeed. And another 12 and a bit in order to drive in the latest turnaround, probably number 12 of in the last 12 years, and he's probably the 10th in the last 10 CEOs in the last decade as well. I mean, he wants another 21 billion rand to do what 10 people before him have said they're going to do. What makes it different this time?
Well, I think the difference was that they were never implemented. I think none of the plans necessary to actually turn the airline around, to make decisions, enact progress which allowed us to take advantage of the competition, to take advantage of the marketplace. If you look at the history over the last 10 years, that was never done. So I think for once, the management of the company, the board, has said, look, if you want us to fix it, it's quite fixable from an airline mechanics point of view. And that's where I come in. In terms of the amount of money that's required, we're being very honest. That's the amount of money necessary to make the changes. Allow us to make those changes, give us the financial structure that allows us to move forward, and we'll fix the airline. Yeah. I don't think that's happened in the past.
No, it hasn't. But so what is the plan? Let's say we as South African taxpayers agree to give you 21.7 billion rand for a turnaround by 2021. What is the plan to make this a cost-effective, competitive, and an airline worth being proud of? Because we're not.
3 things. One is we have to be financially secure. We have to have a balance sheet which allows management, the trust to move forward and have negotiations and try and reduce a lot of our costs. Secondly, the commercial element of South African Airways has to be improved dramatically. The competition has come in, stolen a march. We haven't reacted. If anything, actually, what tends to happen is that we bury our head in the sand and add a bit of cement, perhaps. Therefore, the biggest competitor to SAA is SAA, in my opinion. I think the other airlines have given us a much bigger opportunity because the market has increased. And thirdly, it's very simple. In order to make money, you have to have aeroplanes in the sky. This particular wide-bodied engine, aircraft, only does about 11 hours per day. To make money in this business, this aircraft needs to be in the air every day for about 14 to 15 hours. So in our business, network drives 75% of our cost. So therefore, we need to realign our network, understand how we can get the aeroplanes in the sky more effectively, and then make sure we sell the available seats effectively. There's nothing more perishable than this seat next to me empty on takeoff.
It's a complete waste of money. You're flying anyway, and if you haven't flogged the seat, well, then you have a problem. We'll talk about networks in just a bit, because we are situated at the southern tip of Africa, which makes us quite hard to do, but Qantas has got the same problem, and I'm sure the Argentinians and the Brazilians and the Peruvians and the Kiwis have got the same problem too. So let's talk about that in just a little bit. But SAA feels like having a drug addict in the family that the parents keep funding. He keeps coming back and saying, terribly sorry, I won't do it anymore, and keeps getting the handouts. And South Africans are quite tired of this as a national pastime of constantly bailing out. What guarantees can you offer as somebody with decades of airline experience, turned around airlines in the past, that this time it will be different?
Well, there's no guarantees, but I think if you're given the opportunity to implement the plan as opposed to simply talk about it, we need to move away from process and move into substance. And if you look at the processes that surround the decision-making opportunities or processes within the airline, they're cumbersome, they're bureaucratic, it takes months to make decisions. You can't compete in a very highly competitive, almost dog-eat-dog business. We're all very friendly at senior level. The airline business is quite small, but we're obviously tackling a very tough competitive market. We don't take any prisoners. So you've got to put yourself in a position where you can take advantage of the marketplace, streamline the decision-making process. The board's very supportive of making the changes, but unless those changes, those bureaucratic changes are made, it's not going to succeed. There are no guarantees in that respect. Give us a chance, change those rules and regulations, and we have every opportunity of making a success of South African Airways.
Based on your experience, airlines that are owned by government, so the country is the shareholder, government is the shareholder, there's a minister in charge who is the shareholder representative.
Sure.
Historically, lots of intervention at SAA, weak boards, management either not supported or meddled with. Is it different now based on what you know about the history versus what you're experiencing right now?
As I understand it, the shareholder, the government, and certainly the new board has said that management has to manage. So that's what we're trying to do. The big tests are coming up soon in terms of we need to start making some changes. The way in which we operate, the equipment we have, the sort of network that we fly, all these decisions are in the process of being put together as part of the implementation plan. And obviously we need to take that to the board for approvals. That would be the big test for me.
I mean, one looks at your competitors, for example, around this airport here at OR Tambo International, and you've got the big double-decker aeroplanes, and the jury's still out as to whether or not those will have longevity, as to whether or not they can really get the volumes of passengers on. And then the vast majority of your rivals are flying smaller aircraft, one engine on each wing, much more fuel efficient, just as quick, just as safe, but just far more cost effective.
Absolutely. Our fleet is aging. This particular aircraft is long overdue. It's got 4 engines. Fuel is, as of today, around about $76 a barrel. That's very expensive. Therefore, it's a gas guzzler, as you termed it earlier. No, part of our network study in terms of how can we fly our aircraft more effectively, more often, to more destinations, internationally as well as domestically and regionally, requires us to look at the fleet as we move forward. And certainly that's part of my remit. And we're quite close to having some pretty clear idea in terms of the type of network that we want to fly and the aircraft that we require to fly it. If you look at the modern jets, 2 engines, as you say, 25% more efficient than this particular one, same payload, can carry the same distance. So obviously you can make that cheaper. The ownership, the asset is more expensive. So you need to strike that balance financially.
Does an airline need to own aeroplanes? I mean, in the world of leasing and a world where technology moves as fast as it does?
Ideally, yes, because, well, it's a mixture. I mean, aeroplanes are very expensive.
Because you're going to come to us for more money when you want to buy aeroplanes too.
No, but by that time we'll have a strategic equity partner, which is part of what we're trying to achieve. So I think the current funds is to bring the company back to a break-even and a small profit. Thereafter, in terms of developing free cash flow, we have to look for other equity. But coming back to the point of aircraft, ideally it's a mixture, because if you're paying a leasing company, you're effectively paying way over 10%. International rates, not necessarily those in South Africa. So it's quite an expensive way of funding your aircraft. So most airlines, if you look at British Airways, for example, I think 60% of their fleet is leased, the rest is purchased. And a lot of airlines have gone down that particular route. We're not in that position, so therefore we have to look at the lease costs, but that's a question of negotiation. and making sure that we have the right aeroplanes that we can move forward with.
Peter Davies is an airline turnaround specialist. He is the Chief Turnaround Officer here at SAA. We're broadcasting this evening the special edition of Taking Stock from inside an SAA aircraft at OR Tambo International Airport. More on routes, more on frequencies, more on strategic equity partners, more on the difficulty of turning around an airline in just a moment.